there. How could a handwritten tip about the suspect now on trial go missing for years during the investigation? Well, today the jury heard the answer to that question, but if that tip had not been found, Richard Allen may have never been charged. ABC 57's Annie Kate in studio with our update tonight.
A police tip about Richard Allen somehow slipped through the cracks for years. It took 5 years for someone to find a handwritten tip about Allen being on the Monon High Bridge Trail February 13th, 2017. A tip that led to his arrest for the murder of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Richard Allen was busy taking notes on day 6 of his trial. The state's first witness of the day, Kathy Shank, a former Department of Child Services worker who volunteered to help with the case in 2017, taking and organizing tips during the investigation. She began digitizing her database of more than 14,000 tips in 2020, which took her about 2 years, she testified. But on September 21st, 2022, moving her office materials, she found a box in her desk she hadn't gone through, finding an old lead sheet from February 16th, 2017, later admitted into evidence, specifying a Rick Allen Whiteman had come forward and said he was at the trail between 1:30 and 3:30 p.m. 2 days prior. And he ran into 3 girls on the trail, one of whom would later testify to seeing Bridge Guy. That lead sheet was created before Shank's involvement in the case. On the stand, Shank said, quote, "I don't know how that tip ended up in that box," end quote. She found a narrative summary about a Richard Allen who lived on Whiteman Road who was cleared. The state's next witness Thursday morning, Daniel Doolin, a conservation officer who became involved with the case 3 days after the girls were killed. His job was to follow up on leads, and he created the lead sheet on Richard Allen. Doolin reached out to Allen, who denied requests to come to his home, but agreed to meet Doolin in a grocery store parking lot. Their 5 to 10-minute interview was not recorded. The defense trying to emphasize how Richard Allen came forward himself to tell police he was on the trails that day. Notably, Doolin also went out to the crime scene, saw sticks with blood on them, and suggested they be collected into evidence. Steve Mullen was then called back to the stand to talk about his September 21st, 2022 call about the resurfaced Richard Allen tip. I'll cover his testimony and all the rest from today in court coming up on ABC 57 Night Team at 10 and 11. For now, in studio, Annie Kate, ABC 57 News. On ABC 57 News at 6, I told you about a police tip. This afternoon, the state called Steve Mullen back to the stand to talk about his September 21st, 2022 call about this resurfaced Richard Allen tip. He photographed Allen's car, matching it to surveillance footage, and then went to Allen's home on October 13th, 2022. Allen cooperated with police, doing an interview, saying he was at the trail earlier, closer to noon, and they showed him a picture of Bridge Guy. Mullen said on the stand, quote, "His response was, if the picture was taken with the girl's camera, there was no way it could be him. But when they asked for his phone, Allen got agitated and ended the interview." Now, defense attorney Andrew Baldwin with scathing words in cross-examination saying, quote, "Right before lunch, you lied to this jury and that Mullen is quote, desperate for the killer to be Richard Allen." He was pressing Mullen about whether Allen ever said he was going west on 300 North, a crucial detail the defense could use to discredit a witness's previous testimony. Allen said he looped around, the defense argued, meaning he would have been traveling east. Prosecutor Nick McClelland telling Judge Fran Gull that Baldwin is asking questions that are just inaccurate. Baldwin asking, quote, "Words matter. Would you agree? Especially when those words impact the timeline in a case like this, correct?" End quote. Up next on the stand, Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett, a detective on the case back in 2017. That old misplaced tip about Richard Allen was brought straight to Liggett. He said, quote, "It really stuck out in my mind. We had really been wanting to talk to the man who passed those 3 girls that day. We believe that was the Bridge Guy." Liggett says he's seen an enhanced down the hill video hundreds of times, saying in the beginning of the video, Abby can be heard saying, "Is he right there?" and "Don't leave me up here." That's when Libby says, "That be a gun," before you hear, "Guys, down the hill." Now, the prosecution is trying to show that Liggett knew about Bridge Guy and wanted to find Bridge Guy before ever getting that misplaced tip about Allen. Liggett admitted on the stand that Allen got lost in the cracks from 2017 to 2022, and that although someone wrote clear on the tip, he said it shouldn't have been cleared. Liggett testified he believes Allen acted alone in murdering the two girls, but conceded to the defense's questions that there was in fact no DNA or digital forensics to tie Allen to the crime scene. Next up, one of the investigators who searched Allen's home in 2022. Photos of the search and evidence collected were presented. Once again, the defense pressing that none of the physical evidence connects Allen with the girls. And finally, ISP Lieutenant Jerry Holman, who supervised the search of Allen's house. He waited in the car with Allen when it happened, asking him if he wanted to fill out a form about damaged items, to which Allen replied, quote, "It doesn't matter, it's over," end quote. I'll be right back here tomorrow with the latest testimony in the Delphi murders trial.